Well, hello there. How are we today? I am trying to just take a deep breath and remain calm myself and try to present you with the best podcast I possibly can now. I just had one of those little random series of events that these days I try to use as a teacher, whereas in the past it was probably something that would throw me into one of those darker moods and would take me longer to pull myself out of. But yeah, I'll just quickly tell you what happened. I went to put on my washing. I've got a brand new washing machine, so I put the clothes in, started the cycle, pressed all the buttons, and then the machine started beeping back at me. So I Googled what the error thing was, and it came up as something to do with water error coming into the machine. There's not enough water pressure, so I loosened the tap and pressed the start button again, and away it went, and waited till the cycle finished, and then I opened the door, and I realized that it hadn't done the spin cycle, and the clothes were soaking wet. But I thought, oh, okay, I'll hang them out anyway. So I set up an indoor washing machine, an indoor, clothes dryer thing, because I don't have a dryer because that's broken, but that's another story. So I went to hang the wet clothes up inside over carpet. I know that sounds very stupid when I say it out loud, and in hindsight, it wasn't a great idea. So as soon as I did that, the clothes obviously started dripping all over the carpet because they were soaking wet and the dryer hadn't actually spun that excess moisture off. So I went and hung them outside, and while I was doing that, I had my socks on, so I walked outside, and then the grass was all wet, so I got really wet feet, and then hung these clothes up outside again a second time, and then by then I was very frustrated, so I put a snack in the microwave and I heated it up and grabbed it out, and as I was about to eat it, it fell off the plate and went all over the kitchen the kitchen sink. So yeah, and now I'm trying to do a podcast for you because I love doing podcasts, and it's just a funny little event in my life, and it's funny how life can just suddenly go from, you can go from being in such a good positive mood, and then a random series of events can suddenly change your perspective on everything. I know it's nothing what happened to me in the grand scheme of things, but these sort of things happen to all of us all the time, and it's all about how you use them, I guess, in your experience. When things like this happen to you, do they drag you down and take you to a darker place, or can you have the wisdom to kind of have a laugh at it and realize it's nothing really. It's just life being life, and this is what we come to expect as human beings. It's just never a consistent flow of joyful, blissful experiences like you hear in these near-death experiences that I read. Life here is like being at an amusement park, I often say, because you're going on rides, relentless rides. They never stop. From the time you wake up in the morning till the second you go to sleep, it's just this crazy adventure of dizzying highs and terrible lows. And what's just happened to me was nothing. It's just a series of unfortunate events, and there's other people out there having some really, really difficult times right now. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that the quicker you learn that life is never going to be one steady cruisy journey, and learn to accept that things are going to happen that's going to upset you no matter what sort of mood you're in, no matter how much love you put out into the universe, no matter who you think you are, if you're the president of the United States or you're just a homeless guy on the street, you're going to have a day that, in some ways, we're all going to go through similar emotions and have similar feelings. It's just going to, these emotions are going to be triggered by different forms in our own experience. Like the president of the United States might have an argument with the president of another country, whereas the guy living on the street might get ripped off in a drug deal by the guy who sleeps around the corner. But it's going to give you a similar feeling of dissatisfaction and, you know, it's going to make you upset with life. When you get those negative feelings, you do not enjoy them, and it's unpleasant, and you don't want to be in that place. So life is going to be life, and it's taken me a long time to slowly get my head around that and realize it's never going to go the way you want it to all the time. And I guess if it did, it would get kind of boring. But anyway, I thought I would share that little experience I just had with you, and now I will start reading the experience. So today I've got one from the ndurf.org website, and it is from a man called Brian H. I had a very profound and hyperreal visitation by my guardian angel. I've since named her Angie. Mind you, I don't know her real name, but I got the impression they don't have names as we know them. She accepted my referring to her with the name Angie during the encounter instead of a generic term like angel. It started Saturday evening, 2 or 3 weeks ago, in the middle of February 2018. I was working to help my sister through some rough spiritual issues that were going on a few months prior to this experience. That Saturday evening, before she left, she told me that she felt she was going to be okay after talking with me all of that day. I went upstairs to watch a movie, but got a strong suggestion to just go to bed early. Following the hunch, I turned off the movie. Then I took some Tylenol for a headache that I felt was coming on. I heard a distinct, soothing female voice tell me, "You're not going to need that tonight." So I put the medicine away and went to bed. When I laid on the pillow, the most beautiful female voice I ever heard came to me again. She said, "I have a small gift for you tonight." At this point, I brushed her off, saying, "Yeah, right. What kind of gift can you give me? I must be extremely tired because now I'm hearing things and talking to myself." She then responded that she would let me sleep for 4 hours, but that she would be back. I agreed and told her that was fine. I just wanted to sleep and didn't believe I was actually talking to anyone. It was 8 p.m. at the time I fell asleep. Strange thing was being aware of her before sleep. As I went to sleep, she was still there in my mind's eye, standing nearby. She was in front of a large gateway filled with grey light, with the mist rolling around its edges. She was smiling and watching. I thought it was unusual to have a figment of my imagination do that. But oh well, I was tired and slipped into a gentle darkness. The next thing I saw and felt was my figment of imagination coming back. She reached over and gently grabbed me under my arms while she lifted me out of bed. When this sight sensation happened, I had a wonderful feeling that went through my body and down my spine. I knew something about this dream was different. I felt what later I can only guess was unconditional love and other positive feelings or sensations that words cannot convey and that I had never had before. I told her that I must be having a lucid dream. She smiled and said, "It's not a dream, hun." I then exclaimed, "Sure it is. These are really realistic. I read all about them, but I don't get these too often." She then said again, "You're not dreaming, and when I put you back, you will know it's not a dream." Then another level of heightened awareness came in another wave as she held me. I told her, "I must be dead. Somewhere my body is choking to death, or I stopped breathing." She reassured me that my body was fine. To ease my anxiety, she let me see it lying peacefully in bed. The time I noted from my clock by my body was 12:10 a.m. I then doubted what she was and asked, "Are you really an angel or something else? Can you prove to me what you are?" She smiled and told me that this was common from the earthly perspective. There, doubts exist. So she took my hand and we went to a higher space. As we moved, something even more extraordinary happened. Suddenly, I had no doubts. I didn't have any other negative emotions or thoughts because it was not possible to think of such things. All of the laws, rules, and conventions of mankind had vanished. At this point, the word bliss does not convey or come close to explaining what I experienced. She smiled and said that all I was feeling was a small taste of the love God has for me and for all of us. This encounter lasted for over 4 hours. She told me many deep, private, and meaningful things about myself, about humanity, and how we are all the same and made of His light. She said she was made of the same light as we are, that we are all fractals of Him. She told me this was my reward for searching for God and for God's truth. She was so happy for me that I had gotten so far in my own determined search. She was also glad that I had the presence of mind to ask God for assistance to help me in discerning the truth with the piles of ancient papers, books, and modern references I had read and collected for years looking for my own answers. When I looked at her, I thought to myself, if ancient man had seen something like this, is this how religion got started? Would they consider her a god? She immediately read my thoughts and gave me the message I was not to worship her. She was a missionary from our Creator, sent to help me on my own unique spiritual path. I was allowed to be thankful God had given me such powerful help in my quest. I was assured that Angie really did exist. She told me all of this was happening because I deliberately went on my own path to find God. She showed me how years ago I discarded my old music tastes. I then learned to listen and appreciate music that was inspired from a higher level of consciousness. This was music that didn't hurt the spirit and mind with negative messages or discord. I had also stopped watching movie and show materials that pandered to the lowest common denominator. I avoided the temptations of drugs and alcohol. I had engaged in self-sacrifice to care for others. I did not get involved in relationships that did not have true love at its core. I would repeatedly deny my base human nature for high ideals and standards that I achieved for myself and expected of others. That because I had deliberately reached out to God, God came halfway to meet me. This was despite the difficulties and distractions of earth at this time. My mission was to encounter and hear the divine. Angie told me that I did the right thing when I helped my sister. When I was confused or had doubts, I prayed directly to God for guidance, to find the words to help when I needed His help. I had asked God to be in my life, to have my guardian angel involved in my life, to be able to hear them easier, to do the right thing and make better choices that help others. She affirmed that God heard every thought I ever had. She told me that there was no shame in having a human experience or being human. Please bear in mind that while she told me these things, she gave me very clear images of examples from my life to help clarify the meaning. She showed me this. She showed me how she was with me from the beginning and how she helped me in childhood when I was frightened or had bad dreams or made difficult moral choices in life. She had shown me all the beings, heroes, and archetypes that she was in my dreams over the years to help allay my fears and guide me in a positive direction. At some point, I had told her that I did not want to go back. This was more than everything I could imagine or hope to be real. She told me I had to go back. She said that she only had a certain amount of time to show me things, that I was doing important work and was an important part of God's plan. I was shown how sad people would be if I left that night. Even the smallest, kind gesture to others ripples through to soften hearts. I am where I'm supposed to be with the people I'm supposed to be with. Words and thoughts have power, and that keeping in a positive frame of mind and speaking politely was important despite being faced with the negativity and ignorance of others. She told me that I was perfect as God saw me. She said that I was too hard on myself many times when in reality we learn lessons on earth and making mistakes was part of the learning process. That this human form was for a specific purpose to interact in this world, to do the jobs and roles God chose us for. All things are for a purpose. From our small perspective, we can't see the end result. But that it was worth it and something beautiful in the end. Time has no meaning. I could have been there for 1,000 years or 10 minutes. The love was so overwhelming that I had forgotten about material things or the illusion that time was. I was shown various material objects that I'd wanted throughout my life, but that I did not care about any of them while here with her. Someone could have offered a planet for me to rule over, but I did not want it. That love was enough. I could have existed on the love alone. She showed me all the things in my life where someone had hurt me. There were thousands of instances of pain, some long forgotten, but now were shown to me in vivid detail. She asked me if I was able to forgive. I was able to forgive them all from the perspective I was seeing it from. She smiled when I forgave everyone, saying that this is the biggest thing one could do to go against their base nature instead of perpetrating pain upon others. Because we are all a part of God. We only hurt ourselves when we hurt others. They too are an aspect of God, just as I am. There really was so much more. Most of the encounter and talk took place on a beautiful alien planet. The landscape had with a 500-foot tall tree in an open plain. There was a beautiful storm and river in the background with violent lightning. There were many strange, beautiful plants and insects, the likes I'd never seen anywhere. She said we could explore this world someday. It had a thick atmosphere with low gravity. Angie was 15 feet tall, beautiful and stunning to my eyes. Her eye color was gold, and they emitted light like the sunrise. There was not a negative tone to her speech or to any feeling she expressed, or any negativity to anything I felt. Her speech was far more eloquent than I could ever attempt to imitate. She also emitted a soft, light glowing hue from behind her. I was given the impression she could appear as anything to convince me of her status to convey messages from our Creator. She was going to put me back in my body at 4 a.m., but I begged for an extension. I saw her look back over her shoulder towards the green sky. Someone seemed to be talking to her, but I didn't hear anything. She then turned back toward me and said I could have 30 more minutes, but no more than that. In that time, she showed me that love was actually like a physical force, like gravity, electrons, or photons of light, and that they pass through all times, places, and dimensions, as they are actually a part of God in everything. When she put me back, I felt like I was putting on a heavy, tight diving suit. 2 loud knocks on the bedroom door snapped me awake to remember everything vividly. I felt like I weighed a single pound. This feeling of unnatural peace, being lightweight, and feeling loved persisted for 12 hours that Sunday. I also had the sensation that I was physically held at some point, as in my dream. When I sat up in bed, she then instructed me to get up and start my Sunday by washing everyone's clothes to help my grandparents. The humour was not lost on me as I pulled clothes from the dryer. One moment I was in another dimension on an alien planet with a being of unimaginable intelligence and grace, being told the most profound secrets of the universe. The next minute I was folding boring clothes to put in a boring basket for boring work tomorrow in a mundane world. I got the impression she would visit other times in my future, and that I had made a promise to follow her as my personal teacher to get help, to help me get closer to our Creator. That is the end of Brian's experience. So, as you can see, this one wasn't an actual near death experience, it was a spiritually transformative experience, and that gives us all a bit of hope, I think, that anything that, we could have an experience like this at any time without having to actually die. So let's run through it again. So Brian has what he describes as a hyperreal visitation from his guardian. He names from his guardian angel, I should say. He names his angel Angie. When something similar happened to me back at the start of my spiritually transformative experience, it's almost like I'm reading word for word what actually occurred when I started communicating with what I would have called an angel as well. I do remember the angel telling me that I could name it anything I want, and names weren't really important because they're just a label that we give each other as humans. And when you think about it, like, names are just weird. They're labels for a bunch of cells and blood and skin and tissue for that are combined in a way that come together to form a human being, and then we attach a word to it so it knows when it's being called or referred to. It's not who you truly are. Your name isn't a representation. It's kind of a symbol for your ego in a way, because the ego identifies with it and attaches all these symbols to it. It says, okay, my name's Nick. I'm a little bit shy. This is my job. I like to do this, and therefore this is who I am. But after researching near-death experiences, you start to see that what you are goes beyond your name and your preferences and your personality, and you're much, much more than that. And a name is meaningless, really. So anyway, he gives this angel the name Angie, and I called mine Baby from memory. So Brian says that he's having this. Well, he's explaining the origins of his story here, that he is working through with his sister with giving her a hand with some spiritual issues. He doesn't go into detail as to what they were, but says after a day of talking to her, he goes to bed. He goes to bed early because he's been talking to her all day. He doesn't feel great. He takes a Tylenol, which is a Panadol, I think, in Australia. And as he's about to sit down and watch a movie, he hears a voice say, "Nah, you're not going to be watching a movie tonight." He says it's a voice. It's not intuition. It's actually a voice saying, "You're not going to be watching a movie tonight." So he decides to go and lay down in bed. Then he hears this beautiful angelic female voice say to him, "I have a small gift for you tonight." And he's like, yeah, yeah, whatever. And then he kind of brushes that gift, that voice off and says, yeah, what kind of gift can you give me? I must be exhausted because now I'm hearing voices and I'm talking to myself. So the voice comes back and says to him after he brushes her off, look, I will be back in 4 hours. And he says, okay, that's fine. I need to sleep. You come back whenever you like. It was 8 o'clock. He looks at the time when he decides to shut his eyes and turn in. As he closes his eyes, though, he sees that Angie is still there in his mind's eye. I don't really know what that means, in his mind's eye, but I guess it's just he is kind of visualizing what Angie looks like, but also she's appearing at the same time. And yeah, you can actually see where she is. He says she's in front of a large gateway filled with grey light, with the mist rolling around its edges. He says she's smiling and watching him. So the next thing he says is he is feeling her gently reach over and grab her under his arms while she lifts him out of bed. He feels a wonderful feeling run through his body and his spine, and he knew something about this dream was different, he says. The next thing he feels is unconditional love, positive feelings, and sensations that words cannot convey. We all have heard this before, haven't we? The inability of the experiencer to truly convey what they are feeling by using human words. She thinks she's having a lucid dream because he says that he often gets similar sort of sensations and in his dreams, and he's done a bit of research on it, and this is what he chalks what's happening to him. He basically thinks it's a lucid dream, and the angel comes back to him and says, "No, you're not dreaming. When I put you back into your body, it's then when you will know you're not having a dream." So the next thing he thinks, okay, well, if I'm not dreaming, maybe I'm dead. Maybe this is what happens when you die. You leave your body. You're met by an angel, and I don't blame the guy. It sounds very much like what would happen to you when you die. But the angel reassures him and says, "No, you're not dead. Your body is just down there." And then they look behind and they see his body lying peacefully in bed. And at the same time, they have a look at what the time is, and it's now 4 hours after he actually went to sleep. So it's actually just after midnight. So now this angel's really got his attention, and he is really starting to question what exactly is going on. He's starting to cross things off. Okay, I'm not dead. I'm not having a lucid dream. What exactly is this? What's going on? And he even starts addressing the angel with some of these questions. He says, "Are you an angel, or are you something else? Can you prove to me what you are?" The angel turns around and says, "Look, it's very common for you to question what this experience is, obviously, because he is now in a dimension that is clearly not in the physical, or not entirely in the physical anymore. He can obviously see certain aspects of physical reality, but he is definitely communicating with another being, and he is no longer in his body. So there's obviously going to be a bit of confusion there and doubt, and a few other negative emotions start to creep in. But as the experience goes on, he says that the laws and conventions and theories that all mankind have start to go away and are replaced by bliss and trust and truth and God. And I like it how he's described it here. He just says that it's just not possible for him to even attempt to doubt anything anymore once this experience progresses, and he has these negative emotions just totally removed, and everything has become more positive and full of light. And that's the experience. Then he goes on to say that the experience lasted for 4 hours, and they had many deep conversations about humanity and what is meaningful in this life. And she goes on to say that we are all made of the light that this angel is. And it's interesting she says that. I would have thought that most of us forget that. Most of us forget we are made of light, and to think that we are made of the same things that angels are is it's pretty good, actually. Then she goes on to say we are all fractals of God. So this is another interesting point, because I often, and those of you who listen every week are probably tired of me talking about this, but one week we'll get an experience saying we're all fragments of God, like this one. We're all individual portions, and then the next week I'll read one and it'll say we are all part of this one source, and we aren't separate from each other at all. And I guess this statement doesn't go into too much detail as to what they actually mean by we are all fractals of him. I guess by fractals they could mean we are all still connected, but we are still our own little individual soul that has its own journey and evolution. And this is the theory, I like to think is true anyway. And I probably say that because I'm in this individual body right now that is experiencing life on its own and making its own decisions and growing and evolving in its own unique way. And it's kind of fun to be on that journey and have your own destiny in your hands, and to think that we might one day go back and become at one with everything and lose that opportunity as individuals to grow and develop no matter what dimension we are in. It kind of, doesn't sound right to me. I just feel that I'd like to think I have a unique individual soul that is able to choose its own adventures, if you like, and decide when and where it wants to go next, and have the experiences it needs to become more evolved and learn. And so part of me gets a little bit disappointed when I hear that we go back and mold into this collective consciousness that potentially randomly spits out bits of consciousness into life forms that occupy the physical realm for no apparent reason. And, as I say that out loud, it doesn't quite sound as though that would be the case. I must be missing something here. There must be some form and reason and method to how we've all ended up in the bodies we are now. It's not just because our parents gave birth to us and raised us. There's more to it than that. Uh, we are having this incredibly unique, complex experience, and surely, I guess we are having this for a reason. We are having this to grow, and I need to believe that it is more than just this one human experience we have, and we are here to watch the body we are growing in as a soul rather than just this human being willing to, go through this life of challenges for no apparent reason. For me, you know, I believe that it is the soul in the body, and we are here to experience life as a human being, like we are spiritual beings having a human experience. So I often get conflicted when I come across this, which is why I talk about it a fair bit on this podcast as to what are we individuals or are we just a collective that has randomly given us this life we are living. And it's probably a bit of both and neither and somewhere in between, knowing what this universe is like, or my interpretation of this universe as a human. It can't quite understand exactly the meaning behind it all. But then I think, maybe it is just as simple as an individual soul having this experience for all of us. And once we lose this body and our soul goes back, we can go and choose the next one. Maybe it is as simple as that. I hope so. So the angel goes on to say that this is Brian's reward, this visit he's getting from his angel for him seeking the truth. Now, I hear some of you kind of cringe when I read that sentence again. Why is it when I've been seeking God my whole life that I haven't had an angel come and visit me in my sleep and talk about the questions and answers that all of humanity have for God? Why Brian and not me? And I totally agree with that. And I just look at my own experience too. And I didn't believe in God at all. I wasn't seeking God out whatsoever. It was like, I had a target on my back and God came looking for me. So I do not know. This is another big question I have for those of you who know the answer. Let me know. Why is it that some people have these incredible spiritually transformative experiences or near-death experiences and are able to get in touch with these divine figures of the universe and have these experiences that are, breathtaking and life changing, and others don't have them at all. And it really is, from a human perspective, very random. Like, this guy doesn't say how much he had been seeking God or what his spiritual path was, but he says that this is the reason he's getting a visit is because he has been seeking God out, and he's even taken a few steps. Like, he says he has researched, different religions. He's gone through ancient papers, books, modern references, and looked for his own answers over the years. And but doesn't really go into much more than that. Oh yeah, he says he also um, changed his taste in music to seek out music that supposedly comes from a higher level of consciousness. He stopped watching movies that pandered to the lowest common denominator. I'm not too sure what he means by that, but I'm guessing violence or, just guns and all that sort of stuff, which is in 90% of movies someone gets killed or or not 90%, but it's a huge chunk of movies that are based around death and people getting hurt and just people doing bad in inverted commas things, and that he has given up watching movies do that. He has also engaged in self-sacrifice and avoided relationships that didn't have love at their true core. He says he has constantly strived for higher ideals and standards. And because he has done all this, this is why God has reached out to him. And he says God has met him halfway. He's taken that step towards God, and God's taken a step towards him. And this is the way God has repaid his service or dedication to learning about the truth and who God actually is. And this is like the opposite of my story. I kind of I'd take a step back from God rather than a step towards God, and God came to me. So I don't think it matters what you do in terms of seeking God out. I think if in my case, it was just totally random, and I'd like to think there's things you can do to improve that connection to the divine, and obviously there is. The more you read about it and invite that part of the universe in, and keep a very open mind as to how your experience is being interpreted. There is a multitude of ways that God does communicate, and lots of spiritual teachers tell us that God is talking to us all. We just aren't listening sometimes, and it's always there, apparently, in plain sight. We just sometimes miss it. She then goes on to say that this angel's been with Brian his whole life. She has been communicating to him via dreams, and they do a little bit of a life review here, and she goes back to when he was a childhood and shows him some nightmares he had, and then some ways this angel actually helped allay any fears he had during challenging times by appearing in dreams soon after a nightmare, or during just lifetime events, just human events. She'd come to him in dreams and give him some guidance that way. So I occasionally talk about dreams here. I'm no expert on dreams, but they clearly seem to be a way from these experiences I read on a regular basis for beings to be able to communicate with you. And if you have trouble remembering your dreams, you should consider writing a dream journal. So as soon as you wake up, jot down what you remember dreaming about, and that will improve your ability to remember what actually happened during the night. And I think if you start doing that, you will be surprised that there is a fair bit you do forget if you are not regularly documenting it. So he is loving this experience. He starts saying to his angel, "I don't want to go back." And she says to him in response to that she only has a certain amount of time to show him things. Now, this kind of doesn't ring true to me, or there's some misinterpretation here, because she is in a dimension without time, and we know, if you are a regular listener here, that 1 second in human time can feel like 10,000 years in this other dimension. So she could potentially keep him there for eternity, and he could come back to his body and not know any difference. So it could be there, he could be in this other dimension for the equivalent of a million years human time, but he could come back into his body and it could only feel like a second later. He then gets a little bit more wisdom and says the kindest, smallest gesture can ripple through to soften hearts. The angel says you're exactly where you're supposed to be, with the people you're supposed to be with. And always remember, words and thoughts have power. This is repeated over and over again in these experiences. The power of our thoughts and how they can really change our perception of the reality we have. If we're able to replace that doubt and those more hostile voices we hear ourselves in our head talk about, that ego telling us we're not good enough, or we're not good looking enough, or we're too fat, or we can't achieve this or that. And if we can replace them with more positive frame of mind and just try to change the way we talk to ourselves, we can really, really boost our own confidence and make ourselves do things we couldn't imagine were even possible. Because when you have that self-doubt, that's all it is. It's just a voice in your head telling you you can't do this or that. Why listen to it? Who says that voice is right? It's just your ego. It's just a conditioned pattern of thought that is picking up what the collective is expressing as well. It's wrong. It's not accurate. So you shouldn't listen to it. If you have a dream, if you feel passionate about something, if you want to change jobs, if you're and there's something and you're listening to your mind saying, "Oh, what if this happens? I can't do that," and it's stupid to listen to that. I'm sorry, but it is. I listen to it all the time myself, and I can fight back every now and then, but I try not to listen to it. You can't help but listen to it, but I try not to take it seriously anymore and try not to believe what the voice is saying. And it's a shame that humans are trapped in this world of inner voice that isn't as positive as it could be or should be. And I think if we all took a little bit of time to improve our inner voice, if you like, we could be more powerful, magnificent people and not so afraid all the time, especially if we can believe these spiritual experiences I read every week and understand that this life we have is just one of many. So we shouldn't be taking ourselves so seriously. The angel goes on to say, God sees Brian as perfect and all of us as perfect. She says that we are all too hard on ourselves, when in reality we learn lessons on earth, and making the mistakes is part of the process. All things happen for a reason. We can't see really that reason from our limited human perspective. This is stuff I read week in, week out, that the perspective we have as humans is just a fraction of the reality of what is actually going on. We can't really see the bigger picture from where we are standing right now, and what is happening is something much more beautiful and beyond our wildest imagination than the little ego we live with on a daily basis that says we're not good enough, and in reality we are much more than that. I'm just reading paragraph after paragraph here, and it's almost like every second sentence is like, wow, I read this last week. This is this is what this experience I read a couple of weeks ago was saying. And the next sentence says, time has no meaning. So there is no such thing as time. It's just an illusion of the experience we have in this dimension as a human. It's not a real thing. Obviously, it's a bit of a paradox because we measure the time we spend on this planet and we can see time ticking by through our own personal aging and through the evolution of our society and technology changing and different cultural events happening on a regular basis, and obviously all those things can be measured through um, time between the last time it happened, and all these things that constantly remind us that there is time. I actually occasionally, I not haven't done this for a while, but I used to put a block, like a bit of paper, over my clock radio in my car, and I just start to notice exactly how often I would look at that and be controlled, I guess, by what the clock actually said. So for me, although it didn't really change my behavior much, it was just an interesting experiment to see how much the mind looks at the time without us even thinking about it. And when you start blocking the clock off, and then and then your mind starts to get a little bit frustrated and goes, "Oh, I need to know the time," and then 30 seconds later, a minute later, it kind of doesn't care. But, obviously a few minutes after that, it'll start wanting to know what the time is again. And obviously the time's an important thing because, we need to make an appointment, so we can't be late for work. And it serves its purpose in this dimension. But what I'm trying to say is here that this is part of this world only. When we are in this other dimension time, it's not it's not like it is here. It seems like it's very, very different. Like it's, I don't know. Those times when you have, there's that word again, time. When you have those moments where time just flies. You might be watching a movie or with a loved one or eating a nice meal or having a really good conversation or whatever it is, and then you look at your watch and you're like, oh wow, like there goes, where did those 2 hours go? It's probably a little bit like that in this other dimension. Like you just totally lose concept, or it's like it doesn't even exist. The clock or the time doesn't even exist, and you just totally get absorbed in whatever experience you're having. Like I kind of hope this is what this other dimension is like, and it's weird, isn't it, to think that we are eternal beings that are indestructible and we have experiences forever. It blows your mind, and it's exciting, and it makes this human experience a little bit more meaningful because you can lose your fear of death a bit, which gives you more time to focus on things you think are important, and less time to focus on things you're scared of. So if you can focus on love more, it's going to give your experience a lot more meaning and purpose, and it has to me anyway. Goes on. Brian goes on to say, while he was talking to this angel, he was actually on a beautiful alien planet, so some other world where they had 500-foot tall trees, and he could see a nice storm with lightning in the background. He goes on to say, like, this experience is fantastic because it's like one stereotypical, if you like, event after another. And I guess all these experiences are a bit like that after a while, for me anyway, because I've read so many of them. But he says his angel could take any form she liked, but this form, he says, has been taken because it is pleasing to him, and he just gets the feeling she could have appeared as anything, but the form she's taken has given him the ability to understand the messages in the best possible way, and therefore this is the form she took. So he looks back at the clock now. They take a look back into the physical. It's 4 hours later, and he sees it's 4 a.m. And he says, he's begging to stay. He wants at least another 30 minutes, and she says, "Yeah, okay, you can have 30 more minutes then." And then that 30 minutes, what happens there? He gets wisdom on what love is actually all about, and the angel tells him it's a physical force. It's like gravity. It's always there in all things. It's everywhere at all times, including right here with you right now. And then we get the part where he comes back into his body, and as usual, it's described as not a pleasant feeling. And he's not coming into it back into a body full of pain or just recovering from surgery either. He just finds he's coming back, he slips back in, and it's like putting on a really tight, heavy suit, and it's uncomfortable. But then the angel seems to do something, and then he begins to feel light again, and like he's buzzing, and this feeling of love goes on for 12 more hours while he is in his physical body. And he finishes with a bit of humour here. He says, 1 minute, 1 minute he's in this other dimension on another planet, in another world, with this loving being and being told the most incredible secrets. And now he finds himself back in his human body, and he is washing the clothes and working in this boring, mundane world. And it's like chalk and cheese there, isn't it? How he's put it there at the end. But yeah, that's the end of Brian's experience. So a lovely little story there um, of an angel visiting a normal human and reminding him, I guess, who he and therefore we truly are, which is, as this story says, a fragment of the light. We are a part of God, and this is the best way we can describe it, I guess, in human terms. So, as I was saying throughout my analysis of that experience, there's plenty in there to um, reflect on. It was almost every sentence, it was like another reminder of what experience after experience is telling us. And I've read over 100 of these on this podcast, and obviously listened and read and researched a lot more than that. And it is a very consistent thing to hear this message of unconditional love, of timelessness, um, of connection, of just it's what you hear time and time again in these experiences, and for me, this is the biggest proof. I you know I admire religion. I have nothing against it. There's parts of it I think are fantastic, and others that are a little bit harder to take. But for me, this topic is a very similar thing, and for me personally, it packs a little bit more of a punch, because it's just normal people, normal anonymous even people, talking about their experience of the divine, and uh, and when you hear it in a modern day environment where it's not from a book that was written hundreds of years ago, and it's just normal people relaying what they've learnt and experienced, it gives it a lot of credibility, and everyone is going to find their connection and their, the best way to continue on their spiritual path in their own unique way. And for me, this is it. So it just personally is what resonates as true, because there's no agenda here. That it's just people wanting to share what has happened to them. There's no money for them. There's no fame for them. It's just purely someone writing us an experience just to let us know what happened to them, and we can interpret that any way we like. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks for listening and getting through another one. I love you. I hope you are evolving on your journey as a spirit. There's no other, you have to, there's no other way you can, because I know you're all experiencing life, and life is throwing up all kinds of challenges to you. So just use those challenges to be your teacher and to remind you to stay calm, stay present, don't get too absorbed by the drama of the external world, and just try to appreciate the miraculous nature of your own existence in this physical reality, with that underlying knowing that you are much more than that. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.